Hey everyone, this is Brano, and I'm pretty impressed with the overall maturity of people discussing Cuffbust's rough launch, because it didn't do as well as expected. Now, if you are out of the loop, the guy behind the game Choo Choo Charles, which is a mega indie hit, made a friend slot game called Cuffbust. This is a game that was launched on Jeff Kiley's Summer Games Show. It had 260,000 wish lists, and everything looked like it was going to be a mega viral hit. But it launched, and it didn't do nearly as well as expected. Now, Gavin, the guy who is preaching, well, the guy who made the game, he's been preaching for quite a while that game developers really need to focus on concepting and maximizing the appeal of the game. And this has rubbed some people the wrong way because the way that he approaches game dev very much strips the majority of the artistry behind video game development. And Gavin would agree with them. His approach to game development, which is very much focusing on maximizing the concept and appeal of games, does strip the artistry. And some people want to use this as ammunition against him and his arguments, but I don't think that Gavin actually contradicts himself. So I'm just going to play a quick clip of what Gavin's stance actually is.
It's very clear to me that concept is important and that execution is important as well. They're equally important, but I need...
Now, the rest of this video is going through the nuances between execution and concept and how they're equal, but equal means very different things for both sides. So, I would say, based on his logic, his failure actually validates his overall point, because he absolutely nailed the marketing and appeal of Cuffbust. You do not get 260,000 wish lists without nailing that part. And then he didn't do the execution well enough. And he knows that execution's important, and the thing is, I don't think this contradicts his mindset whatsoever, because just because you have the right logic to make a game, it doesn't mean you always have the right emotions. And I get this feeling that he was burnt out and uninspired during development. And because of that, if you are burnt out and uninspired, you are going to make mistakes when you do the execution. And mistakes he made. So how did he fail on the execution side? Well, Cuffbust launched at $20, and it had a single map and a map editor. And the single map was not very replayable. So people felt like, oh, I'm done with this game already after half an hour, and I want more content, and I don't have more content. Now, he did drop the price from $20 to $10 to alleviate that, but that did burn a lot of the early buyers who couldn't refund it, and I think he'll recover from that. But the main issue remains that there is a real lack of quantity within his game. And I know that having released my roguelite Healed to Death, is that people expect a very high number of hours of entertainment for the base price of the game based on genre. Now, in a roguelite situation, my game had 20 hours of content and it cost $15 USD. And I watched a couple of people who completed my game on YouTube, and the general sentiment of there was just enough content to not call this a scam. $20, like 20 hours for $15, and it's short on content. You may disagree with this, but your paycheck is based on how other people feel, not how you feel. And I think that this heavily changes based on genre. So if you're doing story or horror games, you can get away with a lot less content. But if you're doing a systematic driven game like a roguelike or a friend slot game, you're expected to have a lot more content. So, what should have Gavin done, in my opinion? Well, I do not like early access games, and that is largely because it's very hard for the developer to make a clear differentiation between the early access launch and the real launch. Now, just because one's labeled early access and one is labeled 1.0, that doesn't mean that these are emotionally separate. Quite often, people will treat the early access launch as launch. And I think that with most early access games, you cannot excuse quality. But if you can get people excited to come back for future updates, then maybe that's got some potential. And I think that Gavin has a rare situation. Cuffbust was in a rare situation where early access makes a lot of sense, because he's short on content and his game has a level editor. So he could have done an early access launch and said, hey guys, we don't have a lot of content. I just want to get this out here. It's starting with one map and a map editor. We'll do a real launch in a year. And during that 1 year, they could have developed 3 to 5 more official maps. And then during that time, the real hardcore Cuffbust fans would have filled the, the store or the custom lobbies with a bunch of free new maps. And so when they finally do the 1.0 launch, not only do they have 5 new maps of content to make the game feel very full, but then they've got all the custom games and all the custom maps made by the community. So for the people who are looking for that 100-hour experience, they're going to get that in that launch. So I think that Cuffbust was in one of the rare situations where an early access release made a lot of sense. And I think this is also especially true for multiplayer games, because it's one thing to convince one person to buy your game, but in a friend swap game, that person then has to convince their friends to also play it. And if the value is not clearly there, it's not gonna happen. So I definitely will not be doing early access for my games. I am in a position where I can just delay the game to make the best 1.0 release. But if you're contracting people and you need to get the game out, I would say early access is a better choice. Especially like if you're launching and you've got a quantity of content crisis, you've got a lot of wish lists, you've got a decent amount of trust from your user base, and you have a level editor that's linked to Steam Workshop, I think early access becomes an absolute no-brainer. But that's hindsight for you. It's a lot easier being a critic than a game dev. But at least he made it to launch, and that is so much more than I can say for Hightail. And if you want to learn about my opinions on Hightail's failure, you can watch it right here or in the description down below. Have a good one, guys. Bye.